Hi everyone, and welcome to our third installment of Voices of West Windsor, in which we aim to bring more marginalized voices up in front. Today, we have with us Tricia Baker, the founder of an organization called Attitudes in Reverse. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
I am very excited to speak with you, so without further ado, let's get started. Our very first question is, what does West Windsor mean to you?
When I think about West Windsor, I think about community. I'm always amazed at how people come together and support each other. And also diversity. You know, we have so many people from around the world, and they're here, and we all learn from each other. And I just think it makes it a special place.
I agree. And what makes West Windsor unique or like different than other towns?
Well, I'm going to go back to that diversity again. You know, one of the reasons I remember we moved here, it was because of that, you know, that our children would grow up with, you know, people from different races, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. And that's what we wanted for our children, was to become educated and to be empathetic towards those who were different. And I just felt that this was a really good place for us to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. Growing up in West Windsor as a high schooler, I've learned so much about different people, and I've truly learned how to respect another person. And I think that that's an incredible reason to move here. And where do you see yourself in the West Windsor community?
I see myself and Air as a partner in the community, partner with the schools. You know, going in, we now talk to middle schools, both middle schools as well as both high schools, with our educational programs. So it's just going to be really important. Not only with the schools though, but faith-based organizations have also invited us in, and we've spoken with the staff, we've talked to parents, and we've talked to students within those organizations. You know, I really feel it's important for us to say yes as much as we physically can say yes to the community. I try hard not to say no, because it's an important message that we have to get out.
That's incredible, truly. As I've met the therapy dogs that you bring in, and they help so much with the stress and what's going on. Having that little break is really, and they're so cute too, so it's really nice. What's a word that comes to mind when you think of West Windsor?
Kindness. You know, I've met so many just wonderful people throughout our experiences living here. You know, our kids were very involved. They were involved in scouting, they were involved in swimming, and just we met so many wonderful, kind people. And I think a lot of that, I'm just going to go back to the diversity. It teaches us to be accepting of all people, no matter where you come from, no matter what the color is of your skin, no matter what your mental health diagnosis might be. And I think it's that kindness that we have experienced, and hopefully we'll be able to carry forth and share out with the communities beyond West Windsor.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see West Windsor in 30 years? And what do you want to see West Windsor being right now?
I see the growth that's happening within the schools right now in West Windsor. I see all the projects that are happening. I know community it looks almost like it's doubling in size. And I just know there's so many more kids who are going to be coming into the community. And I really feel it's important that, you know, I know we're going to talk more about this, but, you know, we talk about mental wellness, but we really have to expand on that within the school districts, you know, and younger, because we want to get that message out to little ones. I was doing a program up in North Jersey with the second graders, And I started talking about, what it might feel like to experience a crisis. And this little boy, 7 years old, goes, I feel that way all the time. I have bipolar disorder. And not one of his classmates thought anything negative about him, which really touched my heart, because they've obviously been very open about talking about his illness and teaching them that they have to be accepting of him. If somebody's in a wheelchair, or if someone is blind or has that visible disability, we're going to hold the door for the person in the wheelchair. We're going to, be more compassionate, a little more compassionate, empathetic. And we need to be that way too for those who have mental health issues. But the problem is, we said they're invisible illnesses, right? We don't see them. And that can be the difficult time, the difficulty. And very often too, and I don't want to jump ahead, but people see the behavior that results from the illness, and we get judged by our behavior. And that has to change. We have to, again, understand the illness, so we understand the behavior, be more empathetic and kind to those who are struggling, get them help, so we can help resolve the issue, help resolve the behavior.
Yeah. And how do you think West Windsor can improve, especially in this field, in the mental health and mental health awareness area?
I have seen tremendous changes in 11 years, and I'm really grateful for that. When Kenny was in school, it was really hard for him. I want to say most of the people did not understand his illness. He was embarrassed by his illness. He told his peers he had mono for 3 years, that he was struggling. And some people, I wouldn't say he was bullied, but there were some people who were just not kind to him. And that included some staff, which, to be fair, they just didn't know, because we didn't talk about it. And I just see the changes. I want to applaud Dr. Adolescence for the changes that he's making within the school community. That the whole child approach, that it shouldn't all be about grades. It's got to be about mental wellness. Happiness is so important. And you can have the best grades in the world. You can get the best job, get a really high salary, but that doesn't mean you're happy. So you have to make sure that happiness and mental well-being is built into the equation. And I've seen those changes happen in the district. I still think there could be more changes in that direction. I have seen, more counselors being hired specifically to support students who are struggling, and that's a positive. But I have to say, I do want to see more parents. The sad part is, when we have a parent meeting, if we get maybe a couple dozen parents coming to a presentation talking about mental wellness, that's a lot. We really don't get a lot of parents. And I have to say, I'm speaking as a parent who had a child with a mental health disorder. We think that it's just a phase. They're going to grow out of it. And they don't want to talk about it. They feel like, well, my child's too smart to be affected by a mental health disorder. And one of the messages that we try to get across to parents, especially in this district, because we have so many students who are highly intelligent, gifted and talented, doing all the extracurricular activities, looking to get into the Ivy League schools. It's the smart people who are highest at risk. People who have mental health disorders tend to have very high IQs, at least 10 points higher than those in the general population. So you may think your kid is very smart, and because of that can't be affected by mental health issues, but they're actually more inclined to be susceptible to mental health disorders. And that's why it's really critical for parents to understand what mental health disorders look like. In this country, 1/3 of all of our children, actually I take that back, 20% of all of our children are affected by, and this is up to age 18, are affected by some mental health disorder, ages 10 to 18. That's 1 out of every 5. Less than 33% of those children actually get mental health treatment. And it's because as parents, we don't know, because we don't talk about it, or we think that, well, it's not my child, it's somebody else's child. You know, in the beginning, when Kenny first died, we did meet with discrimination because people just thought we must have had a horrible family for him to decide to take his life. And that's part of the message we try to get across, is that he struggled with a biological brain-based illness that had a genetic component to it. We also lost his grandmother to suicide. So as a family, we're not perfect, but I don't think there are many families that are perfect. He knew he was loved, and he still lost hope, and he still, you know, we were not able to find the cure for this evil illness that stole him from us. So people have to understand, and I think more and more people are starting to recognize that, well, it could be my kid. And we want to make sure that they're recognizing it early enough so that these young people can get treatment, because mental health disorders are highly treatable.
How do you think parents can improve on either their listening skills or better getting their kids help? Like, what advice do you have for parents?
Well, when there are these workshops, you know, attend, because we are providing a lot of information. We're providing information on signs and symptoms of the onset of mental health disorders, or signs and symptoms of someone who's contemplating suicide. You know, as a mom who's lost a child to suicide, I talk to a lot of parents who've lost suicide, and almost all of them will tell me there were no signs. But then when you start to talk to them more in depth, they'll say something, and in my head, I'll go, well, that was a sign, you know, and people don't realize what these signs are, you know, change in sleep and eating habits, talking about going away or wishing you were never born. That was something Kenny talked about. I wish I was never born. Well, he was sad. Children, when they are experiencing sadness for 2 weeks or more, we all get sad, but when it continues, it's just something that we need to look into. Doesn't mean that there's a mental health disorder. It means we need to look into it as parents. We need to be open to the idea. As I said, 1 in 5 of all American teenagers are struggling with some mental health disorder. And the CDC just released some statistics last week that for 18 to 25-year-olds, the suicide rate since the pandemic started has more than doubled. It went from 11% to 25%. That's huge. That of the thoughts of suicide has doubled. So 11% previously of our 18 to 24-year-olds thought about suicide. Now 1 in 4 of all American teens ages 18 to 25 are thinking about suicide. And parents need to know that this is happening, because how do you stop a problem if you're not aware that it's happening? And it's just that simple acceptance that it might be my child. Just because my child is highly intelligent, highly successful, doesn't mean it can't affect them. Kenny was an honor student. He was a star swimmer. He had lots of friends. If you looked at him beginning of freshman year, you would think he was very successful. However, at the same time of his success, he was still struggling with this mental health disorder. He was still struggling with thoughts of suicide. And at that point, we had no idea. We just thought everything was going along, everything was great. And then one day, there were signs. There were signs. We didn't know the signs. And then one day he was acting very erratic, and I talked to a friend who was a child psychologist, and she said, bring him to the hospital and have him evaluated. And if it wasn't for her telling me that, I wouldn't have done that. But that was the day we found out that he was having suicidal thoughts. And that was the first day he was hospitalized. So I'm grateful to her for letting me know that. But parents just need to, because we want our kids to be perfect, right? We want you to be perfect. And you know what? It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay. You know, I used to have a really high paying, successful job working at Merrill Lynch. And now you know, most of what I do, I give away my time. And I have to tell you, I am so happier now. I feel much more fulfilled. I miss Kenny with my whole heart and soul. But as I said, I just feel like life is good now. It was good then too, but it's good in a different way. And I just feel life is much more rewarding now than where it was previously. So, you know, we don't all have to be living in a mansion. We all don't have to have the big fancy cars and the big giant TVs. You know, going back to what I said earlier, you know, happiness sometimes eludes us because we're so busy chasing that dream of what we think success is. Success truly is having a roof over our head, food on the table, and being happy. You know, and I think we have to just start to kind of, and as hard as living in the pandemic time is right now, I think it's made me think a lot about that as well. And I'm hoping that it's caused a lot of people who are home to realize time with family has been great, right? I know we're all spending much more time with each other. You know, I said earlier today, it's really a gift that we're giving this time to slow ourselves down, to slow our lives down. We start doing more walks outside with our dogs and enjoying the outdoors and the fresh air, and just the fact that you're outside experiencing trees, it helps lower your cortisol level, you know, so those simple things. So I just think we have to try to look at each day in a more positive way. It's really hard to do sometimes, but just realize that each day is a gift. And, you know, I look at having Kenny in my life for 19 years. That was a gift. I was blessed with having him in my life. And losing him taught me that I need to truly appreciate all those who are in my life and not take anybody for granted.
Yeah, that was beautiful, because at the end of the day, money is just sheets of paper, and the relationships that you have and build, that's what really matters at the end of the day. That's what's going to stay with you.
Right.
And is there someone in this town who has inspired you?
There have been a few people. I have to say we have a wonderful relationship with Dr. Adderhold. I mentioned him earlier, the superintendent of the school district. And I'm really, truly grateful for him and for listening, because after Kenny died, it was challenging. There were people within the district who didn't know how to respond. They thought that you weren't supposed to talk about suicide because, to be fair, the belief at the time, 11 years ago, was if you talk to people, especially young people, that you put the idea of suicide in their head. So the response was, we won't talk about him. And Dr. Adderhold knew that that wasn't reality. And then when he became superintendent, you know, he invited us in, and, you know, we've been able to work with the district, work with, you know, we started off in high schools, and then we're down the middle schools, and we're in the elementary with the dogs. Also within the school district, Dr. McClellan Crawley at Community, she was one of the first people to actually invite us in. I think there was a little bit of stigma about the Baker family after Kenny died within the school district. And she was the one, she welcomed us in, and we spoke with her gifted and talented students, and it just became, started to expand more and more, with more teachers welcoming us and our programs into the school. So I'm grateful for that. And, you know, I have to say too, you know, the West Windsor Police Department, we have a wonderful relationship with them. I'm really blessed to have the amount of people who care about the community. You know, I work with a lot of them, and they come into schools during our programs, and I like the kids to meet them. Sergeant Jelinski is actually on our board, and he will come into the schools, and I like the kids to see his face and know who he is, and the kids to know that he cares. Because I will tell you, when Kenny was struggling, what he would do was he would go out walking at night. Walking, he used to say, moving used to help him slow down the thoughts in his head. It used to help him relax himself. But sometimes he'd be out walking 11 o'clock, midnight, and he'd be stopped by a police officer. And, you know, I was always grateful when it was a kind police officer who knew he wasn't out to cause trouble, who helped him, you know, get home.
And where do you see mental health in the school system? Because especially over recent years, there have been more and more reports talking about the stressful environment. And I know that the district, a couple of years ago, had to change their curriculum in order to make it better for students. So where can improvements be made in our school district?
So I'm going to give you an opinion that most people are not going to be happy about, but my feeling is that our children sign up for too many AP classes, that they should really choose their classes wisely. You know, pick one class, maybe two that you feel might challenge you, but there's no reason for any student to be taking 5 or 6 AP classes. If you look at colleges, a lot of colleges, like say you're going to go to college for biology, a lot of those colleges won't even take your AP biology class. So why are you taking that? We really have to think, and this goes back to parents having smart conversations with students, having smart conversations with counselors. You know, just take what classes you enjoy. You know, you're going to be doing extracurricular activities. Pick one, maybe two. You know, students really have to try to get to bed earlier. I know when I talk to kids in our district, I ask that question, how many hours of sleep do you get? Or who gets more than 8 hours? And they all laugh at me because almost none of our young people are getting 8 hours. And then I ask the question, who gets 5 or less? And I want to say at least 25% or half of our students in our district are getting less than 5 hours of sleep every single night. And that is so detrimental to the adolescent brain. You know, their brain grows until age 25. And if they're not sleeping, their brain is going to be missing out on a lot of development because that's when your brain grows and develops, when you're sleeping. So I just think we need to talk more at home and at school about the importance of sleep. You know, if you don't sleep, you're not really functioning well the next day. You know, a lot of times I'll go into schools and it's 7 o'clock in the morning and the kids are like, they all have their heads down on the desk. I'm also a big believer. I think our high schoolers should start school later. I don't know if that's ever going to become a reality, but you know, your clock, your internal clock, you don't get sleepy until 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. So if you start thinking about what time you have to wake up in the morning in order to get that full 8 hours, the math doesn't work. So I really think that maybe our younger children, maybe they start a little bit earlier because they're going to go to bed earlier. And then maybe our older students can start their school day a little bit later.
I remember that being a whole debate in our school.
I know, it's been around for a long time since my kids were in school. So it's been at least 10 years, that debate. And I always tell everybody, if I had a magic wand, I would wave it and school day would start for high schoolers 10 o'clock. You know, I mean, that's also another positive of the virtual classes. I think you're starting a little bit later. Am I correct? Do you know?
Yeah, last year, like in the springtime, we started at 9 and ended at 1. But in September, the high school starts at 7:40 again.
Starting again. I think because you're doing part virtual and part.
Whoever wants to go to school can, whoever wants to do the whole virtual. So just like the school year, our day starts at 7:40.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think that it should start later, you know, and kids need to get their sleep. You know, the positive changes I've seen, as I said, is that, you know, Dr. Adderhold, you know, it helped implement that whole child approach, less stress. You know, the mental wellness, the physical wellness, the overall happiness of the child is important. You know, there are more counselors on school campuses now. I know both South and North have counselors specifically for those who are struggling with significant mental health issues from Rutgers Behavioral Health. that's a huge addition. There should be, I think, more education for teachers about mental health issues, just so that there's a little bit more understanding and more empathy. You know, there were a couple teachers who didn't understand Kenny's illness and they called him lazy. He wasn't lazy, he just had an illness. You wouldn't call a child struggling with cancer lazy. You know, and I've seen improvement, but I really feel that there can't be enough mental health education for parents, for school staff, and then also, you know, for students. It's more. And then, so one thing I'll say too is that I could see, I'm working with a couple school districts in adding on-school facility therapy dogs. Yeah, in fact, I'm working with Hopewell Valley Township, Dr. Smith, who used to be assistant superintendent at West Windsor. His goal is to have at least one dog on every school property every single day. And we just certified 6 dogs, 6 administrators and their dogs. And now we just started training a whole new group of 8 staff and their dogs. And I've talked to Dr. Adolescence a little bit about it. And I know we've had some interest peaked, but I just think it would be, you know, important, if not having staff with dogs, but just having the dogs in on a more regular basis. I think coming back in September, for those who are going to be on school property, I think having the dogs there would be really important. You know, petting a dog, looking at a dog releases oxytocin, serotonin, lowers your cortisol level, just makes you feel good. And so, you know, I just would like to be able to offer that to the district come the fall, is to be able to be there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Dogs make me so happy. And I know they make a lot of other people. I think that that'll be a really, really great thing to add on in the school. And also, when I was in community, they opened the wellness center for the first time. So what are your thoughts on having something like that maybe in more schools and for younger ages?
I think that's a wonderful idea. I really do. I think students need a place where they can relax, take a break from education. You know, a lot of young people, you'll find they go to the nurse like almost every day. Like, why are they going to the nurse every day? They need a break. So maybe there's another space that they can go where they can get a break and not even feel stigmatized by the fact that they're going to the nurse every day. So no, I think that kids need to have their downtime, their quiet time. And I just keep going back to, you know, we need more education so that people aren't being judged. You know, we talk a lot about discrimination of race and religion and sexual identity, but we still don't talk about discrimination towards those who have a mental health disorder. And we got to get that out into the conversation just as much as we talk about the other ones. And just understanding that when someone has a mental health issue, they don't choose to have that illness. You know, just like somebody's doesn't choose to have dark skin or doesn't choose to you know, be transgender. It's who they are. And we just need to get those. And that was the idea behind our In Their Shoe exhibit. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the whole idea with that was we have almost 300 pairs of shoes, and every pair has a tag on it of something that some young person might be struggling with in silence. And the idea was these are all people who represent people who have lost their lives to suicide. And the idea is for the people walking through the exhibit, for those who have no idea how hard it is to wake up every day and live with a mental health disorder, is just to increase some understanding and empathy and then kindness towards those who struggle.
Yeah, I've seen the exhibit before on one of the walkathons, and it moved me. There were so many shoes, and I think I started crying that day. It really affected me to see that it does affect real people. It's not just something that you see in the movies or on television, but it's something that affects maybe even my friends. So that is one of the most powerful exhibits I think I've ever seen, especially for a topic like this.
If I could just add on to something you just
Yeah.
said, is that, you know, for understanding your friends, sometimes when someone lives with a mental health disorder, it can be really hard to be their friend, but they truly need their friends. So I just encourage young people that if you do have a friend who's struggling, just continue to be there for them. You know, if they have a family member who's struggling, be there for them because they truly need their friends.
I agree. I completely agree. And a lot of talk has been about like virtual learning versus hybrid learning. A lot of people are saying that virtual learning will cause more stress versus hybrid learning. So, what resources can parents use, and how can the school system better be leaders in mental health, especially in regards to the coronavirus? I know a lot of people whose mental health has greatly declined during the quarantine and lockdown period, but I also know the same amount of people who have taken that time away from school to work on their mental health because school caused a lot of issues for their mental health. So how can the school system and parents better be helpful for students dealing with the pandemic and the different types of schooling?
Right. So a couple suggestions I have is I think parents should create, and with the students, should create a schedule, a daily schedule, especially if you're doing virtual versus hybrid, and then adhere to that schedule. Because when you have a schedule, you know what to expect for the day, and that helps to lower your anxiety. The other things I suggest too is, you know, turn off the news sometimes because there's a lot of negativity on the news. And I can't stress enough that we have to remain hopeful. This will pass. It's a very difficult time. It's a challenging time. You know, people have lost loved ones to this horrible illness. It's a time of uncertainty, but we just have to have hope. Because even if you look back through history, you know, the pandemic of 1917, 1918 pandemic, you know, we moved past that, you know, and it may still continue to be a struggle for a while, but we will move past it. And we always have to hold on to that hope that things will get better. And just in regards to school is, you know, maybe some kids are learning that homeschooling is better for them in that type of environment. It's more nurturing. They're getting more out of it. It's not having a significant impact on their mental health. It's actually having a positive impact. So if it works for their family, maybe that's a solution. You know, I really think this is a time for us to be looking at our whole lives differently. And, you know, as I said earlier, spending more positive time with each other, spending more time outdoors, you know, things the school can do. You know, again, I'm working a lot with Hopewell Valley. I know that their elementary school is setting up outdoor classes for their little ones, you know, which is wonderful because I think their plan is to bring their little ones back every single day. And I don't know if it's for the whole day, but it's every day so that there's continuity. And because I think children strive on that continuity, what to expect tomorrow. And it's when you don't know what to expect that it causes us this anxiety. But, you know, maybe the district is looking at doing something like that, getting the kids to school, doing outdoor classes. I also teach dog training. I'm doing outdoor classes. We're all social distancing and we're outdoors and we're enjoying the outdoors. So I think there's those options. But I think the school needs to be ready for the amount of kids when they come back to see that significant increase in mental health issues. And what I think we also, all of us, parents, as well as school administrators and teachers, is understanding that it can take up to 8 to 10 years for an illness to develop. So what's impacting our little ones now, we think, oh, they're so resilient, they're in elementary school. You know, what's the impact going to be on their life in the future? You know, I think sometimes about 9/11, which was, it was a horrific day. And I just remember everybody, we had the TV on, and every day you saw that horrible thing happening over. And it had such an impact on the West Windsor Plainsboro community. We lost so many people here who worked in Manhattan. And it had an effect on our kids. But I don't think we realized it then, you know, because they seem like they're doing okay. But we need to be aware that maybe it's not impacting them today, but what's the impact going to be on their future? And that's why all of us need to be educating kids, talking. Parents need to have this conversation with kids that, you know, the brain is an organ. It's just an organ in our body, and it gets sick, you know, but it can get well. Have that conversation. And I know that conversation is happening more and more in the schools. But we need to be ready for what might be happening in the future. You know, I hope I might be wrong, but just in what I've seen in the spikes in suicidal thought, and sadly, I've heard of too many young people dying of substance abuse disorder and suicide since this happened. I just think it's going to get worse before that gets better. But we have to make sure that we're ready as professionals, you know, to educate parents, to educate school staff. The school administrators have to be ready, and students need to be open to talk about it. And, you know, I have to say, our students are so open to talking about mental health issues. It's my age. We're the ones with the hangups, you know. And like I said, when Kenny died 11 years ago, the thought was that you don't talk to kids at all about suicide. And then after a couple of years of us being involved, you know, in suicide prevention, we started hearing that, well, it's okay to talk to adults who work with children about suicide, but you still don't talk to kids about suicide. But now, within the last couple of years, there's more and more people talking directly to students. You know, Youth Mental Health First Aid now is doing a specific program for teens, but they're talking to juniors and seniors. Well, I can tell them by our research that's too late by the time junior and senior year happens, that we really need to be talking to the kids in middle school. That's when they're most open. They're starting to see the signs and symptoms either within themselves or within a friend. Remember I said earlier, half of all mental health issues present by age 14. So we got to educate kids as well as parents before 14. So if they see something, they can see a doctor, they can see a therapist, they can get treatment. And the earlier you start treatment, like any other illness, the more likely the success of that treatment.
I can also genuinely say, like, speaking on the perspective of middle school, that for me and a lot of the people I know, middle school was one of the hardest times that we ever had. It was harder than anything that high school has presented us with, because we're learning who we are at that point.
Right.
And so I think that reaching out to middle school ages is excellent, because I think they're the ones that need it the most. I know I did.
Right.
And how does West Windsor as a whole, how can it improve on how it confronts mental health? And does it have to improve, or is it at a good point right now?
I have to say we're doing better, but just like the whole nation, we need to be talking more about it. You know, I feel almost like the conversation is just starting, and we have so much more to talk about. And we have to get past that stigma, you know, that not my kid, can't affect my kid, and it's negative. You know, sadly, I know some people even who've lost children to suicide, and they move. Like, they don't want to see anyone. They don't want to talk about it with anyone because they're afraid of being judged. You know, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but the day after Kenny died, there was an article written about him, and the amount of horrible, judgmental things that were written about our family, it was just, you know, my good friend said, don't look at any of them. because people judged our family that we must have been a horrible family in order for him to feel that he needed to end his life, not understanding that it's a biological genetic-based illness that we fought for 3 years trying to help him find the solution to his illness, the cure for his illness. So we still have more education to do. And again, my age people, you know, our young people are getting it, and they're getting treatment, and they're open to therapy, and it's just a really good thing to see. But every once in a while in our district, I'll have a young person come up to me and say, you know, I wish my mother would see this presentation. You know, I had one young person say to me about one slide, I wish you could send that to my mom. You know, just because it's just, sometimes it's really hard for kids to communicate this really tough topic to their parents. And to be fair to parents, we're really busy. You know, parents are dealing with so much stress now during COVID. Many of them are unemployed, and a lot of them are trying to find ways to put food on the table. So it's really challenging. But really, we still have to be open and understand that our young people could still be struggling. And the one thing I've learned about West Windsor, Plainsboro students is they truly don't want to add any extra burden onto their parents. They'd rather keep it in themselves and deal with it themselves than talk to their parents. And that's why parents really have to be aware, open and understanding, and be able to ask questions. How are you feeling? How is your mental health? Are you feeling depressed? And not just sad, because we all get sad, but are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling anxious? You know, are you having physical symptoms with the anxiety? You know, Kenny used to get physical symptoms. He would have thoughts racing. He would have heart palpitation. He would get joint pains. He would have stomach aches, all from his brain illness. You know, so parents need just to be open to that conversation and not be embarrassed or not be afraid. And if you are truly concerned about your child, it's actually okay to ask them if they are thinking about suicide. And that's a real tough question to ask somebody that you love. But I will tell you, it might save their lives. You know, the day I mentioned earlier where we actually figured out Kenny was suicidal, I talked to my friend. She told me he needs to go to the hospital for a diagnosis, you know, for an evaluation. And I remember I said to him, Kenny, we need to go to the hospital. He didn't argue. He didn't fuss. He got up and he walked and he got in the car and we went to the hospital. He knew he was in trouble that day. He knew he needed help and he wanted to get help. Sadly, in our situation, we ran out of time and he lost hope, and we just never found the right solution for him. But people who are living with these illnesses, who are living with suicidal thought, suicide's not about ending life. People don't want to end their lives. They just don't know how to make all this pain go away, the emotional pain, the physical pain. And it's also important to understand that people who are living with suicidal ideation have brain illnesses, right? So your brain is not thinking clearly. These brain illnesses are evil, and they lie to you and they tell you that you don't deserve help. And that's another reason why so many people who are living with suicidal thoughts don't ever reach out and ask for help. So as adults, we really need to be in tune with our young people, as parents, as teachers, as our kids start coming back to school, you know, as the administrators. We just really need to be aware and talk openly. You know, we talk now about sex education. We talk about all sorts of things in school. Why are we, you know, having this hesitation about conversations about mental health? That still needs to improve. It's getting better. I see changes. I see significant changes, but it still needs improvement.
And do you think this improvement can come in person-to-person or institution-to-person interaction? So institutions can be hospitals, the school, police, the government, emergency services, etc.
I think we all need to work together as a team. I really do. And I see changes in all those organizations you just talked about, for the positive. You know, like at the hospital once, I went in for some test, and I remember them asking me before the test was, do you feel safe at home? And I thought, you know what? This is a really great place for you to ask me that question. You know, because if I didn't feel safe, this is a safe environment for me to share how I felt. You know, so I do feel that institutions and organizations are starting, but in my gut, I feel there's a grassroots effort, that one-on-one, and that's where AIR started, you know, one-on-one conversations about good mental health. We're talking today, right? Who knows how many people this is going to reach? You know, even if we touch one person's heart, you know, and we're able to save one person, you know, that's priceless. So I really feel, you know, that one-on-one conversations, our t-shirts started with the idea of one-on-one conversations. You know, people would say, hey, what does AIR mean? And it gave you that open door to start the conversation. And actually quite a few people have shared with me, you know, they were in Florida, they were in New Zealand, and they had our shirt on, and people asked them. And I think that's so cool that around the country and around the globe, that AIR is starting to have conversations, you know, about mental wellness. So I think we all need to work together, but it's really up to each one of us, you know, to first of all, to understand, and then to be kind to each other, and to not have any embarrassment about talking about it. You know, no shame, no stigma, and allow our friends to talk and to share. And we just need to understand that, and just, again, accept each other for who we are, how we are, and just be kinder to each other. I think in everything going on in this world, we really, on a one-on-one basis, have to be kind to each other.
I think that's excellent. And then actually about the t-shirts, I had experience with that too. I was wearing it at school. I had one of the AIR t-shirts from one of the walkathons, and I wore it to school, and there were people asking me what AIR stood for. And it felt really good to talk about mental health, especially in middle school, when I remember no one talked about their feelings. So
Right.
it was really, really nice. And do you see AIR's mission changing in the future if perspectives change and institutional reform occurs?
You know, we have been growing and developing since we started. You know, if you asked me 11 years ago, would we be doing this? And I probably would have said, well, no, because believe it or not, I'm a shy person. I get really, yes, I know, no one believes me, but I really am shy. So if you put me in a situation with all people who I don't know, I'm going to be the one in the corner not talking to anybody. Unless we're talking about dogs or mental health. Those are the things I could talk to anybody about. But I do see us growing and changing over the years. You know, we started out in high school, and then we recognized the fact we needed to be talking to middle schoolers. And then we started seeing the statistics about suicide rates going younger and younger. So then we've implemented, we now have 2 elementary programs for students. You know, the work with the dogs is expanding. Our AIR Dogs Pause for Minds program is actually a national program. It's recognized by the AKC, and we can actually certify dogs in other states through videotape. You know, so I just feel, because we are small, I always say we're like the little engine who could, you know, we're small, we're able to move fairly quickly in response to what's going on in society. Yeah, and I think that's probably been our big success, is the fact that we have been able to adapt. Like I said to you earlier, 11 years ago, people weren't talking to kids. We were, you know, and then a few years later, they said, well, you can talk to adults. Well, we were still talking to kids. Now they're saying, well, you can talk to juniors and seniors. Well, we're talking to first and second graders. You know, I think everyone's going to catch up eventually, but I think about the impact that we've had on all those kids that we've had on, you know, in all these years, while everyone is still trying to figure things out. You know, we've been able to just watch trends, listen. We listen to a lot of young people, and based upon that, that's how we've been able to implement and bring about changes in our program. in order to be, meet the needs as they change.
Mhm. And are there any additional, you touched upon this a little bit right now, are there any additional institutions and structures you'd like to see West Windsor adopt in order to improve its approach to mental health?
Um, the youth mental health first aid is a big one. I do believe that every adult who works with children should take this program. It's it's an 8-hour program. It's sponsored by the National Council of Behavioral Health, but it's an excellent program in that we talk about, again, what mental health issues are, what are the signs of onset of mental health disorders, what are the signs of suicide. And we do a lot of role playing in this program. And there are people who come and they're triggered, they cry. Like I said earlier, asking somebody that you love, are you thinking about suicide, is a tough question. Part of this program is you practice, you role play that by looking at the other participants' faces, and you realize how hard it is. And that's often you're saying it to somebody who you don't know, or just a little bit, and saying it into the eyes of somebody you love is really, really difficult, and allowing to practice that helps you when it comes to real life situations. So that's something that I think that all the schools could benefit, all the teachers could benefit from, just because, just like in Kenny's case, is, those 1 or 2 teachers who called him lazy because he couldn't get out of bed and couldn't come to school one day. Maybe if they had the right education, they would have been a little bit more compassionate towards his illness. And that's the thing that this program does, youth mental health first aid. So I would highly recommend that for all teachers and anybody who works with children.
Mm-hmm. And how has AIR been viewed over time? Has anything changed? Like, was it originally faced with resistance and now it has a lot of support?
That's a really good question. And yes, it has changed. And yes, we did meet with resistance. As I said in the beginning, again, I'm going back 11 years. A lot has changed in accepting people who have died by suicide, their families. When we first lost Kenny, there was a lot of judgment that we must have been this horrible family. And a lot of people just weren't aware. So in the beginning, we just started off with this T-shirt contest. That's where the whole thing started. And there was resistance, but I think what happened is slowly over time, we were invited into other schools and other districts, and we were able to show the success of our program. And North was actually one of the few first schools we were in. And again, they could see the benefits of our program. At the very beginning, it was a bit of a challenge because who were we? We were a family who lost a kid. And as I said, and people just didn't really understand his illness, and they didn't understand his death. So it was better just to kind of stay away. But we didn't give up. And that's the other thing I tell kids when I talk to them. If you feel passionately about something, just don't give up. Keep talking about it, become educated. We became educated about the topic, and you can, one life can make a huge impact on the world. And you just can't give up. You just got to keep always having hope and working hard. Hard work plays into it. Because there were days, I have to be honest, that I said, why do I do this? I'm working for almost no money. I have no paid vacation. I have no health benefits. Before the pandemic, I had no time off. And sometimes it's really hard. And then I would get a message from someone, either from a young person who said that, our program helped save their lives, or from her mom, maybe on the other side of the globe, who said, I lost my child and I see you get up every day, so you've inspired me to get up every day. So I get a message like that, and it's really funny, ironic, I don't know what the word is, but it's when I'm at my low point that I get those messages, I get that feedback. It's almost like the universe knows I need to have some inspiration. And then when I get the inspiration, I said, okay, I know I can't quit. I know I have to keep moving on, even if it's saving one life. And I know we've saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives, because we've spoken to over 90,000 students so far. Yeah, 90,000. And across the country. I've been invited to California, to Texas, to Minnesota, to where else have I been? We've been to 8 states outside of New Jersey. And I try really hard not to say no to any invitation, because you never know the one life you're going to impact. So just a quick story, like Texas, we got an invitation to go to a middle school in Texas to talk to 8th graders. They were looking for a program. They found us. And I found a woman who, she told me, anytime you come to a school in Texas, we'll fund your programming. So that allowed me to go out to Texas. And it was a group of 8th graders, a small class of maybe about 15 students. And it was the week before they were graduating and moving on to high school. After I came back, I got an email from the teacher who told me that after our presentation, one young girl came forward and expressed suicidal ideation. And I think if I wasn't there, she would have gone on to high school and maybe been lost in the crowd and maybe never, her illness never detected, So I've had at least 3 times schools tell me that they've either called an ambulance after our presentation and rushed a student to a hospital, or they've actually driven a student to a hospital, because young people don't know they have permission to ask for help. And that's what we hope we do, is we give them the permission to ask.
And I think that these examples are some incredible, brilliant examples of AIR's mission and how much you guys have succeeded in doing it. And so that actually is a perfect segue into my next question, which is, what are some of AIR's proudest accomplishments?
I have to tell you, those are probably them. Anytime any young person comes back to me and tells me, you helped save my life, like I'm getting goosebumps, because to think that we can have that kind of impact on another human being, like there are no words for that. And like I miss my son tremendously, but I feel that being able to do what I do through AIR is a gift. It's a gift to be able to talk to young people. It's a gift to be able to help them identify their illnesses. It's a gift to be able to help them save their lives. And I just have to always remind myself of that, as I said, even when it gets tough. But, again, we talked a little earlier, the universe has a plan for us. And I really feel that this was our plan for our whole family. And we just have to make sure we keep our eyes open to what the next steps are in the plan, because I don't really know what the next steps are. We're going to wait and we're going to see, and I'm sure it's going to be presented to us and we'll be able to fulfill that. But it is just a matter of, just being able to keep doing what we're doing and helping to reach kids.
Thank you so much for everything that you've done and will continue doing. It has impacted so many students, so many people's lives. And I truly think that you are one of the biggest inspirations for us all to have. And thank you so much. And on that note, I'm going to close this week's installment of Voices of West Windsor. Thank you so much for joining us today, Trish. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be able to start the conversation with so many people through you and through this podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and I will see you next week.